I said this before, but I film my Bookish Week video on Friday and post it on Saturday morning. Well, I had today off. Today's the 10th, 11th, November 11th. I think it's the 11th. Yes, it is. And it's after 4. And I forgot to make a video until now. That's why it looks like it's 9 o'clock at night here. Hello, people of the world and BookTube. This is Kim at Middle of the Book March, and this is my Bookish Week for Saturday, November 12th. I should know that already. I just talked about the date. How are you? It's been a really good week. And really good? Yeah, pretty good. Yeah, good. I finished 2 books last week, so I'm going to tell you about those. I'll quickly show you what I'm currently reading. I have acquired, as of mail on Friday. I didn't realize there was going to be mail, and I think it was UPS. And I have a little bit of a chat towards the end of this video, so if you're interested, stay tuned. It's coming. And yeah, let me tell you about the books I finished. Now, the first one, ooh, I think I'm going to be controversial. Controversial? Is it controversial or controversial? Controversial? Controversial. Controversial. I read Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. This is my first Thomas Hardy novel, but I have seen several movie adaptations of Hardy's novels, and not this one. So over the years, I have gathered what the story is about, and I went into reading it knowing it's bleak, it's dark, it's depressing, and man, were they right. This is a very bleak, sad book. So, Susan at Road Reads did a video where she basically called this book the greatest novel of all time. Any video, any booktuber I mention, I will link below. So I went into this so excited to read it, and I thought it was very good. I didn't agree with it being the best novel ever, but we don't have to agree. I still think it was a very good book. However, I didn't love it as much as I was hoping to. And this is the story of Tess D'Urberville. Yes. And she comes from a farming family with an unambitious father who drinks too much, and a very simple-minded, ignorant mother, and a family with too many children. They just simply don't have the resources to have this many children, taking place in Victorian England. And so Tess is the oldest. She is, I believe, an 18, 19-year-old girl. And the beginning of the book, we see her with a group of friends dressed all in white dresses. And they are going to a party and kind of an annual celebration. And for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. But yeah, that's what it is. And a young man named Alec D'Urberville, or he says his name is Alec D'Urberville, comes upon her and all of a sudden starts paying her a lot of attention. And he's a wealthy son of a property owner and continues to follow her and approach her and wants to be with her. Tess is a very kind of a gloomy, melancholy young woman, beautiful, quote-unquote farmer's daughter, and she's not really interested in Alec D'Urberville. She is lonely and sad and kind of miserable in her life. She is ashamed and embarrassed of her parents, but eventually she starts to come in contact with Alec more often and finds herself in his company, and he's very assertive and gets to the point where he's aggressively pursuing her. This is early on in the book, and this is one of the many things that happens to Tess throughout the book. And this may be a bit of a spoiler, so if you don't want to know the details towards the beginning of this novel, please go and watch another video. This is my signal that spoilers are coming. So here's your chance to fast forward or to click off or come back at a later time in the video. Okay, so early on in the book, Alec and Tess, he is he is giving her a ride home from a party and takes her off course. They end up in the woods, and he kind of tells her that they're lost and they might have to stay there, and he rapes her, and she becomes pregnant by that rape. Subsequent to that event, there are more and more events that happen to Tess, and it's all bad. There's nothing positive about it. She's in poverty. She needs to leave home. She's left home. She finds work as a milkmaid. She meets a young farmer on the dairy farm. They fall in love, and he rejects her because of her being raped and bearing a child. But he rejects her the night of their wedding. They do get married. So I'm done with the spoilers. If you want to come back, here's my signal that I'm done with the spoilers. So on and on this book goes, and this poor Tess is just, everything bad happens to her. Now here's my issue with the book. Hardy can get pretty fussy in his writing. And the event that I talked about earlier, the first negative event that happens to Tess, I like realism in novels, and that's one of the reasons I love George Eliot so much, is she is a realism author. Hardy is, he kind of circles around the event and circles around the topic, and he writes it in language that is very obscure and doesn't actually come out and say what happened to her. You gather from the text and you gather from the passages what has happened to Tess, but he never outright comes out and says it. That bothers me in an author's writing, and all I can think of is it's Victorian sensibilities, and it's a male author in Victorian England writing about a young English girl. So throughout the book, there are other events that Hardy writes in that style. However, I was very ambivalent about the writing style because the novel is very good, and the writing it becomes smoother, and Hardy goes back and forth between really important dialogue and the textual description of what's happening in the story. So there are plenty of other times in the book where I felt he was being very fussy, but it's very well written. It's very well done. I actually was a little annoyed with Tess because of some of the choices that she made, and I was annoyed that she felt about herself the way she did, and I was infuriated at how she was treated being a young woman in Victorian England, and I kept reminding myself those were the social and moralistic customs of the time, but I hated that, and I thought it was awful, and I thought it stunk, and I just was not happy with that. However, I go back and forth. Ambivalence, I go back and forth. This is a very well done book, and I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. It's definitely a timeless story, and there's so much to talk about here. There's a lot of contrast between morals and religion and women in society, and especially young English women and young poor women. So there's a lot to discuss here. It's a very well done book. Unfortunately, it's not on the top of my list, but it's still excellent. So the second book I finished is The Colony by Audrey McGee. She is an Irish author. This book was longlisted for the Booker Prize. I absolutely loved this book. Absolutely loved it. The book is set in 1979. And we first find an English painter who is sailing to a very remote, rocky, isolated Irish island and has to be transported there by boat. He's looking for the perfect opportunity for a summer of something to paint. He wants to paint the cliffs and the rocks and the surroundings of this 3-mile by 1-mile island containing an extended family on a very small village. And they have to get everything that they need via boat. I absolutely loved McGee's writing style. It's so isolated. I could feel the isolation. I could feel the sparseness of her language and the way she wrote the story. The characters, they're simple, but they're not simple-minded. Very simple dialogue. There's so much to talk about in this book about colonization, about art, about family, about the Irish Troubles in the 70s and 80s. Interspersed in between the storyline on the island are very small vignettes about the violence happening in Ireland with the Irish versus the British. And there are very small pages of text about an event of a killing or a murder or a shooting in Ireland at the same time that the surroundings on this rocky island and the relationship dynamics between the people there are happening. And it's a really interesting contrast. It doesn't, at first, in the first part of the book, it doesn't seem like the two shall meet. Because the island's remoteness, it doesn't seem like they're aware of what's happening in Ireland and England. But towards the end of the book, they start hearing the radio reports and the news reports about the violence in Ireland. And they start talking about that. And so that's yet another kind of commentary that McGee touches upon, is the political atmosphere in Ireland and England, how that infringes upon this remote family's colony that is colonized by an English painter and a French author. And the two of them don't like each other, and they accuse each other of what both of them are already doing. So it's a really interesting contrast and comparison. There's so much about art and painting and linguistics. I just loved this book. I thought it was original. I thought it was unique. It was beautifully written. I loved the setting. There's so much Irish language peppered throughout the book. And there's a lot of discussion about, do we save this ancient language or do we encourage the people to modernize? It was just, I loved it. It was excellent. I was sorry, when it didn't make the short list of the Booker Prize, but I mean, there are plenty of great books on that list, but I did love The Colony by Audrey McGee. So those are the two I finished. Very quickly, I am currently reading Before the Fallout by Diana Preston. This is From Marie Curie to Hiroshima, about the discovery and the invention of the atom bomb. I am rereading The Count of Monte Cristo with the Critical Chicks book group. I'm a little over halfway. And I am currently reading Zero Fail by Carol Leonig, The Rise and Fall of the Secret Service, the American Secret Service. And I wanted to show you what I just got in the mail. Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. This is the paperback UK edition. I love it so much more than the US edition. Once in a while that happens where I just like the artwork. I love the ability to buy it in paperback because it's a really large book. And I just like the looks of it more than the American hardcover version. So I just got it in the mail today. And I think that's it for the books. I wanted to have a little chat with you about a video that I watched that struck me and that I really connected with. And the video is from Micah Cummins, and I'm going to obviously link his video and his channel below. And he talked about how he's evolved as a reader, and it wasn't through the how you evolved as a reader tag. He kind of was just talking about what he's learned about his reading style and what he's going to put into practice going forward. And the main thrust of his video was he's going to start concentrating more on quality of his reading instead of quantity. And he was commenting on how he was very consumed with the numbers and how many books he was reading and how quickly he could read a book and if he had more than one book going at once. And I really appreciated that conversation, and I've talked about similar topics before on my channel. I had talked about a while back that I gave up on my Goodreads goal of however many books I want to read in a year. But what I have done in my own personal brain of reading is I'm looking at what I read last year and I'm considering, can I beat it? So I'm in a contest against myself. Now, this year, it's not even the middle of November yet. I am on track to beat myself for last year. But I realized, what am I striving for? And why do I find myself barreling through books to see how many I could finish? Am I reaching for books specifically so I can pack more in or up my quantity? What was my goal for Shorty September? I keep going back to that. Was I more invested in the quantity of books versus the quality? Did I choose books based on how short they were so I could get more quantity for the month? And yeah, I think there was a little part of me that's like, oh, let's see if I can read a book a day, and how many can I fit into September? This one is the shortest, let's start with that. And I caught myself doing that, and I realized it's not really possible in the way my life is structured to read a book a day, even the really short ones. Well, I would have to read, every single book would have to be less than 100 pages. I wouldn't be able to read a book a day if it were any longer than, and I couldn't read a book a day. But the books I did read, I really enjoyed. But with a few exceptions. Holy the firm, I'm talking to you. So I kind of am questioning myself. What's the goal of my reading life? Am I that consumed with fast reading and reading a bunch of books at once and reading as many as I can in a day, in a month, in a year? And Micah made a lot of sense to me. And I started to realize I'm going to slow my reading roll. And I've already decided that I'm going to pick up a long book in December as a Christmas gift to myself. And what I've also noticed is, as I discussed in a previous video, I'm not really enjoying audiobooks and ebooks as much as I used to. And I found myself picking up a lot of ebooks that I get frustrated with, and if I could, I would probably hurl them across the room. And so I've given up quickly because I realized this stinks. I don't like this. I don't want to read it. What am I doing to myself? I've done that with a few physical books as well. I've picked them up. I've not put them on my Goodreads that I'm currently reading, but I've read a couple chapters and I'm like, I don't like this book. I'm getting rid of it. So I'm not pushing myself to keep reading books I don't enjoy. Life is too short for that. There's too many books to stick with a book that I don't like. And what I've figured out is, right now I have 3 books on the go. I have 2 nonfiction books in hard copy, and I have a classic, The Count of Monte Cristo, in hard copy. I am loving my reading this week because I can concentrate. I know where my books are. I don't mean I know where they are located in my house. I know where I'm at. I know how I feel about each of the books. The Count of Monte Cristo, I'm alternating between audio in my car and the physical book. Because I've already read it, it's much easier for me to listen to the audio and to grasp everything. And the narrator of this particular audiobook is exceptional. I love it. But it's been really easy for me to get a lot of reading in between audio and physical book. And the schedule that we have going with my book group is approximately 2 chapters a day. Very doable, especially with audio combined with physical text. So, and I'm having a hard time stopping myself from reading ahead in The Count of Monte Cristo because it's right alongside Middlemarch as the best novel ever for me. But I have just been loving the pace that I'm reading. The nonfiction books, I've been alternating between them. This particular book is far more engaging, although both of these nonfiction books that I'm reading are very interesting and I'm enjoying both of them. This one is the more engaging one, and I found myself sticking with this one for longer periods of time. But I love having the physical books in my hands. So I may not be reading as much because I'm not finding time on purpose for ebooks. And this is the book I'm listening to in the car. But especially after listening to Micah, I realize I'm really enjoying myself. And I think that's the whole purpose of reading as a hobby. I'm loving what's happening. I'm loving what's happening in my reading brain. And I'm noticing how little I care about the quantity of books. And I am very interested and invested in the quality. That said, I'm also unhauling a lot of books, whether I've read them and haven't enjoyed them, or I've started to read them and DNF them. Sometimes I'm lazy and I just put them back on my shelf. But I'm looking around and I see books that, even former library books, library sale books that I know, you know what? I bought that on a whim for 50 cents. I'm not interested. And I'm going to get rid of a lot of books. I actually started an eBay store. And I'm not going to get into details about that right now. I'm actually loading a lot of books on my eBay store. And I'm not even suggesting that anybody go on there and buy my books. It's just, it's there, and that's what I'm doing to try to, make a little bit of money on a lot of the books that I acquired. But I'm continuing to gauge myself better as a reader. And I'm continuing to gauge, I don't want to rush through my reading. I don't want to barrel through. I want to savor it. And I think that's what Micah was talking about. And that's why I really appreciated what he said in his video. I also want to encourage you, Micah, if you're at all watching this, don't be afraid to DNF. I'm not sure if you are a consistent DNFer, but you did talk about that a little bit. And there's too many good books out there to stick with the bad one. To stick with a book that may not be bad, but that's just not for you. So thank you so much for opening that conversation. And I really appreciated kind of the commiseration that I agreed with and that I enjoyed in your video. So that's it for me. Let me know in the comments below what you think of any of the books that I've read or reviewed or currently reading, or any of the topics I already talked about. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, everybody.